I want to first ask you about the RBI cushion that the government got just a few months back. The RBI dividend I'm referring to. Do you see the possibility of a fiscal deficit tightening to 5 or sub 5%? And what's the kind of an impact that you see the RBI dividend have on the budget?
It is possible, but I am not sure that that is what the finance minister will want to do. There are a large number of spending priorities also. Want to show that we are still on the path of rising capex. If you want to show rising capex, it becomes that much more difficult to say, let me overstep the fiscal deficit target. Some people think it can go all the way down to 4.9% instead of 5.1%. It's possible, but the question is, will she be using the headroom from this Reserve Bank's very, very large dividend? Will she use the headroom for additional capex, or will she use it to bring the deficit down? And some people will say a bit of both. So in that case, it could come down to 4.9 and still have scope for additional capex. I think that is a possibility. I think the larger possibility is that you stick to 5.1 and go for a larger capex.
All right, so you see that as a possibility of fiscal deficit coming down, but at the same time, we'll have to see how the expansion will be managed by the finance minister. But sir, do you think there could be a bigger tilt towards populism and social spending versus capex expansion now that NDA 3.0 has coalition partners also who have their own demands?
If you have enough money, then it is logical to do everything. So the huge dividend that you've got, it is enough for raising capex, having some more welfare expenditure, and cutting the fiscal deficit. This is particularly the case because I find that the income tax revenues are extremely buoyant. And if you project those forward for the whole year, then your revenues are also going to be higher than you projected in the interim budget. So I would say if you take revenue buoyancy and the RBI deficit into account, you can do all three. It is possible to cut the fiscal deficit slightly, raise capex somewhat, and increase welfare payments somewhat. There will be room for all three.
Right, sir. Now, let me also come to what the Prime Minister has been speaking about, and that is Viksit Bharat by 2047. But we've largely stayed away from disclosing or discussing the modalities and details of that. Should we expect something on that front?
By Viksit Bharat, frankly, is not a plan. Viksit Bharat 2047 is the centenary of Indian independence. It was a date waiting to be captured by some political party. And Mr. Modi has been clever enough to capture it before anybody else, because nobody knows who is going to be in power in 2047. So try to make any plan between now and 2047. Who knows who will be in power and what plans there will be. So this is largely a political thing. All that you can ask is a long-range plan like that going to affect the budget this time? And I would say even if that is the rhetoric, in practice, no. At most you can have a vision of a few years ahead. Then we don't know what all is going to change. If Mr. Trump comes to power, what will he do? Will he say, I don't intervene in China's takeover of Taiwan? If that happens, what will be the implications for China on the border? I mean, so many things can happen. There is talk of a breakdown of the international trading system, of things falling. So when so many things can change, the idea that we can somehow plan between now and 2047, frankly, it's not possible, whatever the rhetoric may be. I would simply say they will be looking ahead for the current year, not very much beyond that. I would say it's also not difficult. Look, if you did 8.2% last year, it is such a fantastic performance that there is no need to rock the boat. 8.2% was not due to one policy tweak or some other policy tweak. 8.2% came about because you have changed the entire structure of the economy to become more efficient. And that then has resulted in faster growth without your doing any particular single policy action. Without doing anything, you got 8.2%. When you are going along on this path, Why rock the boat? You don't need big changes. You are already outpacing all expectations on growth. Now, there are some statistical questions as to whether that 8.2 might get revised down. But even if you did only 7.5, it's a fantastic performance at a time when all your neighbors like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, they are all with the IMF. So, our performance is so good. There is no particular need for Mr. Modi or Nirmala Sitharaman to bring about drastic changes. When you are already doing so well, don't rock the boat. I would therefore expect that this budget will be more of the same in practice. There may be some rhetoric on changes to be made. But as I said, when you are on such a good path, why change it in any significant manner? Why invite radical changes where this particular sector of society will get upset, that particular society will get upset? So I would expect that in practice it is a more of the same budget, emphasizing all that they have done, saying how good it is, and saying we are going to continue on this path with some tweaks here and there to upscale what they are already doing.
All right, so you're saying that there's going to be more of the same and there's going to be continuity in the budget, Swami sir, and that's also something that we saw after the formation of NDA 3.0 in terms of formation of the cabinet. But this 8+ growth that you're talking about that India has delivered, do you see this sustaining, or is it more realistic to expect GDP of anywhere between 7 to 8% band?
You see, you have to think what brought about this growth. And as I keep saying, there was no one policy action, but the entire structure of the economy. I mean, you cleaned up all the bank balance sheets and the banks are able to lend. You have this IBC, the bankruptcy code, which is again mopping up these zombie or dead companies and reviving them. You have improved governance because everybody has a bank account, you have the KYC, the Aadhaar, the linkage to things. The delivery of government services has become much better. If you remember, Rajiv Gandhi said that, of every 1 rupee we send, 85% is wasted, only 15% gets through. Today, probably 85% gets through and 15% is wasted. We have had, so the digitization, the Aadhaar, all of these reforms, and I would say in general, much of this digitization and so on has also helped in reducing corruption and improving efficiency all around. So these structural drivers, plus I would say in addition to all these is the rise of the global capability centers. That has not been done by any policy action whatsoever. That is just a consequence of globalization. There is a global search for STEM graduates who are short everywhere else. India is producing 3 million STEM graduates each year. So the whole world is coming to India for STEM graduates, taking them into these global capability centers, and that has solved basically our balance of payments problems. We have a huge trade deficit on goods. Our services more than compensates because of the rise of global capability centers. So these are the huge structural things that have improved the economy so much that it is giving a boost overall. A little policy change here or there is not going to make a difference. Mr. Modi has already tried taking on the land acquisition thing and he retreated. He tried to take on the farm reforms, he retreated. So I would say in the current situation, he would say when you're doing so well, just carry on, don't come out with new reforms which may suffer the same ignominious fate as your earlier attempts on land acquisition and farm reform.
Right, Swami sir. And now let me ask you about the sectors and which sectors will get more focus. In the past, we've seen special focus being given to infrastructure, railway, power as well. And this time as well, market experts are expecting that same trend to continue. Of course, job creation is going to be or is expected to be a big focus area of the government. What is your take on that?
No, I said more of the same means there are many things on the list. One of the things on the list in recent years has been rising capex of government. I would expect them to build on it. So you say all this has been for the good. Let us do more of the same. So they will do more of the same there. They think that this cut in corporate finance rates is helping to attract some FDI. As it happens, FDI fell last year. So I think they will leave the corporate tax untouched. Income tax, maybe they will have some adjustment at the bottom, just to compensate for inflation. They have not raised the tax exemption limit for 3 years. So they may tweak that a little. So, these are small tweaks. I do not think there will be major changes in income tax, in corporate tax. In the last few years, they've been raising import duties, very often on minor items, sometimes on the PLI items. So that again, I would say more of the same. You might find a number of small changes out there. So basically on all these areas, I would say more of the same, and do not expect dramatic announcements in the form of radical change that will create any losers. You don't want to create losers at this point of time. They have had a setback in the general election. They are likely to have a major setback in the state elections that are coming in November. I do not think this is the point where the BJP is going to attempt a major radical change which produces protests and immediate losers. I do not think that is the political economy right now. So, more of the same, and some people might be disappointed that Modi is not taking advantage of this third successive term. But I would just say I expect it is not just it ain't broke, it's doing damn well. When you're doing so well, why rock the boat? I think that's a better way of putting it.
Right, sir. One final question before we let you go. How would you rate the overall performance of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman? This is going to be her 7th budget that she's going to be presenting.
I would say the Finance Minister has been the best for a long time. It's a very good performance. Congratulations to her. I had not thought so in her first budget. I was quite critical. But as time has gone by, the way they have managed COVID was excellent. They avoided going for a huge expenditure like some other countries. They targeted this feeding program, which was implemented very well. Hats off to them for keeping that. Because of that, they did not have the huge fiscal deficits that some other countries had. After that, they've been able to go on this glide path of bringing down the fiscal deficit and increasing capex, which has then kept the economy buoyant. Plus, there is the structural changes that I talked about in the first instance. So this combination has proved very, very good. At the beginning of this financial year, we had some pessimists like Shankaracharya talking of 5.5% GDP growth. There were optimists like the chief economic advisor predicting 6.5. On that, to get 8.2 is phenomenal. So at the end of it all, I mean, you may say all the credit is not to the finance minister, but the finance minister must share the credit for it. I would say when you see the problems of COVID and recovery after that, full marks to Nirmala Sitharaman.
Absolutely, sir. A credit where it is due, and India, under the Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, has consistently maintained India's growth trajectory, especially post-COVID. And even now, amongst its peers, I mean, you look where China is and where India is, and of course, IMF giving out its latest projections. So definitely, kudos to that job well done. But one final question, sir, and this is with view on what's happening in the United States. There are expectations of a rate cut possibility this year. There are also expectations that former President Donald Trump might just be coming back. What's your read-through for India in the event of all of those happening?
Okay. There are two problems. Now, first, Mr. Trump changes his mind every 5 minutes. So it's not entirely clear what he will do. But we know I would first say the chances of his getting elected are now extremely high. The chances of the Democrats beating him are quite low. So we should expect a Trump win, even if that turns out to be wrong, but we should expect and prepare for a Trump win. That then leads you into the worst case scenario is terrible. Suppose immediately he puts a 10% tariff on everybody, 60% on China. Everybody will be obliged to retaliate. The European Union will retaliate. Last time we had to retaliate against Mr. Modi, will say, I have to retaliate. If everybody is retaliating, you are getting into a world trade war where all exports and imports will tend to come down. If on top of that Mr. Trump says, I'm not going to allow H-1B guys from India, the worst case scenario then is quite bad on that front. Beyond that, he has said he is going to go for vengeance. He's going to prosecute all of Biden's earlier officials who acted against him. If that happens, there is likely to be chaos in the USA. On the foreign affairs front, he looks likely to either pull out of NATO or say, I'm not going to put enough money into NATO, you let the Europeans take care of it, which can have major dramatic implications for Ukraine. Beyond that, there is nobody who believes that Trump will really come to the rescue of Taiwan if China invades. He really is not inclined to send one single soldier or do anything. They're very isolationist. If suppose that happens, that again will plunge the whole world into chaos, and we will have to worry that, if China has now achieved its aim in Taiwan, will it next turn its attention to Arunachal Pradesh and Leh? So the worst possible scenario of a Trump victory is terrible. Of all this, how much will actually happen? We do not know. It is possible that, in America, Congress has its ability to stop lots of things. The moment Trump announces something, all kinds of civil rights organizations rush to the courts. Last time he tried to do so many things on immigration against Muslims coming in, everything got stayed by the courts. So the actual enactment, on the immigration was very limited. He couldn't build his Great Wall. What he did get through was on certain budget cuts and so on. So on the financial side, he could do that. So let us see how it goes. As I said, the actual outcome may not be too bad. But then that becomes a best case scenario. I'm merely saying the worst case scenario is terrible.